Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell with me, your host Mark Ducano. You know, comedy is a little bit like love. It can be elusive at first, but with a very small investment it can just carry you away and take you places. It's a taxi, isn't it? Comedy is like a taxi. I love talking to the people in comedy about comedy. If you like to hear what they have to say as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is a rising talent in comedy whose passion for stand-up is uniquely tangible. In fact, it's the naked enthusiasm and excitement in her performance that makes her such a joy to watch. Stand-up comedian Martha Burns. So tell me about growing up in Italy. Is there a comedy scene in Italy?
There is a comedy scene, but there's mostly like sketch comedy, character comedy.
Yeah.
So there was no such a thing as stand-up comedy as a genre. You know, like sometimes you would have like comedic actors doing monologues, but it was like more a one-man show kind of thing. It wasn't, it wasn't a genre, stand-up comedy. Now there is a stand-up comedy scene in Italy, but I don't know much about it because I've never performed in Italy. But as far as I know, it's mostly Milan, and I'm from the south. I'm from Naples.
Yeah.
So it's mostly Milan. There's a little bit of Rome, I think. And in Naples, I think it's like once a month. So it's like, I think you possibly do stand-up comedy once a month. What's the point? I don't know. So there wasn't much. And I don't know. I think growing up for me, you know, I've always liked comedy. But growing up, especially when I was little, you know, like some of the comedy was like, I didn't really get it. I didn't really find it funny, the kind of sense of humor, you know.
Yeah.
And now looking back, I realized that it's because it was mostly sexist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was mostly sexist. I mean, I grew up during the Berlusconi era.
Ah, right. Well, there you go. Yeah.
So basically, you know, especially when women on TV, they were like half naked in some sort of bikini made of paillettes, fake boobs. And so I was like, I could never be part of that, you know, because I don't want to get a boob job, and I'm not tall. I don't have long legs, you know. I cannot possibly do that. And I mean, of course, there were exceptions. There were some good variety shows and political satire. But of course, you know, when you're little, you don't get it because you don't follow politics.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say like 95% of it was bad, you know, and it really was. I mean, looking back, growing up, I was a very good student. I was the responsible one, you know, the first child. Like my mom had lots of energy to discipline me, which she did with my brother and sister. So I don't know. I guess I was living like in this sort of kind of binary thinking, like if you're a good student and you're responsible, you cannot possibly be funny. You know what I mean? You have to be like bad at school and naughty to be funny, you know, carefree is, you know what I mean? Like I didn't have like, okay, you can be both things. Like you can be smart and funny. Like I didn't think it was possible, to be honest. and also again, it's like the kind of sense of humor that I was surrounded by. It wasn't really mine, you know? Yeah. So I just thought I don't have a sense of humor just because I didn't have that one, you know. I didn't know you could be funny like in different ways. Right. Yeah.
So what was it that brought you to the UK?
I don't know. I've always wanted to live in London. I don't know what it was. Like ever since I was a kid, I've always had this fascination for London. And then finally, when I was 17, almost 18. It was the summer I turned 18. I visited London for the first time, and I was like, and I fell in love with it. But it felt like very kind of out of my league and intimidating and so big and so expensive. And I had the feeling that people were mean and nobody would give a shit about you. And so it took me, so it took me so many years to finally decide, no, I want to go. So first, I mean, I lived abroad before. I lived in Barcelona for 4 years. And then I moved back to London, to Naples, and then I moved to Marseille in France for 6 months, just because I was doing an internship at the European Parliament. I mean, one of the offices of the European Parliament. But I simply went there because I wanted to improve my French. And I was like, I have no ambition whatsoever to be a diplomat or whatever. And this was like a paid internship, and it's crazy for me that I got it, to be honest. I didn't deserve it, but it was well paid, you know, like, yeah. I mean, honestly, this Brexit thing, it's like, you guys have no fucking idea. The honestly, like, the EU is the best thing ever. Like, I went to Barcelona because of the Erasmus project, you know, the exchange program between universities.
Right.
So that's how I went to Barcelona the first time.
Yeah. And
they gave me money for that. And then I did the internship at European Parliament, you know, and they gave me money for that as well. It's like, and people are like, what has the European Union ever done to you? You know,
I'll
tell you what.
Don't get me started on that cock up.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing. And so finally, at some point, you know, I got back to Italy to do my, in Italian it's called laurea specialistica, which is a sort of master's degree, basically. Yeah. And I mean, it's postgrad you do after the bachelor. And I didn't know what to do with my life. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go to London. I've always wanted to go to London. I'm going to move to London. And so that's what I did. And it was when I moved to London that I started to watch stand-up comedy, you know, because of Netflix and then obviously YouTube. And I started to go to open mics and comedy shows. One of the first one that I saw, I think, was Catherine Ryan at the Garrick Theatre. Yeah. Have you seen that one?
Yes.
So good. That was so good. And it was so much fun that night, I remember, because I went by myself as usual, because my friends are not big comedy fans. Maybe you can relate to that.
Yeah.
And so I went by myself, and I kind of dressed up, like I put like a cute outfit on, and I sat down and I started to talk with these two girls, and it turns out they were on a date. They were a lesbian couple. And I don't know, they were fucking hilarious. We talked, you know, before the show. One of them, you know, was like, can I buy you a drink? And I'm like, no, don't worry. I don't drink alcohol before a show because I need to focus. That's I'm crazy, I know. And so she came back with a Diet Coke. And I was like, oh my God. It's like not a Coke, a Diet Coke, which is what I drink all the time. You know my soul. You know my people, you know my soul. And then I remember Catherine Ryan, you know, was about to introduce her opening act. And they were joking like, oh, is it you? Are you opening? And I'm like, oh, you stop it. You know, stop playing with me right now. But I know it happened. It was, I don't know, I think it was Lou Sanders who opened for Catherine Ryan and I. Yeah. And anyways, so that happened to me all the time, pretty much. Like every time I would go to a comedy show, to an open mic or whatever, like I would start talking with people in the audience and they would be like, are you a comedian? And I would be like, no. And they would be like, are you sure? And I would be like, oh, yeah. I was like, no, I can never do that. I have stage fright. And they were like, no, but you're funny. You should do it. You should give it a try. And I was like, no, no, no. And then it kind of started happening to me so many times that at some point I was like, okay, maybe they have a point.
Yeah.
Maybe they see something that I cannot see. And so I was like, okay. I talked with another comedian who was a newbie. I think she already done one gig before.
Yeah.
And so I asked her, so how does it work? How much time I have, how much material, I need to prepare. And so how do I apply? And so she was super nice. She explained, she gave me the email, to apply to this all-female open mic.
Yeah.
To ask for a spot. And she said, no, you have 5 minutes. You can do a little bit less, but I worked on that. I prepared my set. I didn't go Mrs. Maisel. I didn't go like, I didn't go Mrs. Maisel. I'm a Virgo. I'm a control freak. I prepared for that. Yeah, I prepared for that open mic for the first gig for like 3 months, something like that. Yeah. And then a week before the actual gig, when they finally gave me a spot, something happened with a guy. I was seeing this guy that I took a lot in my set, Dick. I couldn't remember that. And so basically we finally had sex on Valentine's Day. And it was like so romantic, and I've been wanting it, for such a long time. And at some point, we were in bed together, and he stopped and he looked at me in the eyes, almost as to say, we're not having sex, we're making love here, like it was like very beautiful. And then he ghosted me.
Wow.
And so basically I did my set was about that, or at least a big chunk of my set.
Yeah.
And I never done that bit again, because it made sense, because it was like a week after Valentine's Day.
Right.
So I felt like it made sense doing it that day, but then I never done it again. And I got like laughter and clapping. It was crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was great. So, yeah.
What a way to get material.
Yeah. By the way, he came back. They always do.
So when was this gig?
It was, I think it doesn't exist anymore. It was Funny Women, time of the month. Yeah, it was a Funny Women open mic that they did like once a month. It was a year before the pandemic, I think, more or less. Yeah, it was February 26th, maybe.
So 2019.
I hate to give you the timeline, because I know for a fact that other comedians have lied about when they started stand-up comedy.
You could lie if you want.
All right. The thing about the timeline is that I took such a long break during the pandemic. Like I took like 2 years where I was not in London at all, so I wasn't gigging. So when people are like, when did you start? It's like, okay, I can tell you when I started, but you also have to subtract, those 2 years. It's not fair. It's not fair. Going back to the first gig, it was Funny Women, time of the month. I really wanted to do that because it just felt like such a safe space, for the mommy. When I tell this to male comedians, when I'm like, oh, it was great because it was an all-female lineup, and the audience was all female, except like one guy, Roberto. And when I tell this to male comedians, they're like, that sounds terrifying. And I'm like, for a guy, maybe. For us, it was great. And it was such a warm environment, and I was very, very nervous.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't breathe.
Wow.
I'm glad that I memorized my set word by word, because when I was on stage, I wasn't able to breathe properly, to the point, I'm sure you had the experience of like being in a club, like a nightclub, and like being tipsy, drunk, and like you can, there are things happening around you, like you can hear sounds and you can see things, but it's all blurred.
Yeah.
That was me on stage. That was me on stage, and I couldn't see properly what was happening around me because the oxygen was reaching my brain, I think. but it went great. It went shockingly well. Honestly, I didn't expect that. I just didn't want to bomb. I was like, I just want to get a few laughters, because if I bomb completely, I'll never do it again.
Right.
Because I never thought about doing this. I kind of, let other people telling me. So it's like, I'm not that invested in the whole thing. It's not. So it's like, if it's not working the first time, I'm never going to do it again.
Yeah.
But it went fucking great. Like, so, but even there, I was like, maybe it was a fluke. Maybe I just got lucky, whatever. Maybe it's because I told the Valentine's, story.
Yeah.
And people were on my side. Also, I remember opening saying, this is my first gig.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's why they were so supportive.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I have to do it again. I have to double check.
Yeah.
So I did it. I did it again the month after, same gig,
right.
Funny Women, time of the month. And I did well again. And I was like, okay, then I guess I'm going to do it forever. So, yeah.
Do you know how many times you performed before the lockdown started?
How many times? I'm not sure. I mean, I'm counting them like roughly, because I usually do like 5 gigs a week, more or less.
Yeah.
No, but I think 120, but I think there were more, probably more.
Right. So you did well over 100 in the first year, and then 2 years of none at all.
Yeah.
So you must have been very comfortable as a comedian by the time you then stopped doing comedy.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't very comfortable, but I kind of felt like things were kind of starting to happening, like not happening, but like I was, we're going fine, we're going well, like I got my first paid gig, and I'm talking about doing a set. Yeah. Because I started MC very early on. Right. So I started getting a little bit of money very early on. Mm-hmm. But I've done my my very first paid gig before the lockdown and before the pandemic, and it was just £20. Yeah. But yeah, so I really felt like, oh, I guess things are happening for me, and then the lockdown happened, and it was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's interesting that you were emceeing before you got even your first paid set.
Yeah, I know. I think it's it was luck. I mean, it wasn't just luck, but it was very much me being at the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, I've been doing comedy for a few months at that point. Yeah. And I was hanging out with a promoter and another comedian who was as inexperienced as I was, mm-hmm. basically. But she was friends with the promoter. Right. And so she said, like, very lightheartedly, I want to MC. I want to try it. And the promoter was like, sure, I'll give you a trial spot, to MC. And I was like, okay, this is my window. If he said yes to her, he has to say yes to me, because we are on the same level, Yeah. And he has no choice. So I was like, by the way, can I do trials? And by the way, this other comedian, she's not doing stand-up anymore.
Right.
She was never like really invested in the process, but she was like my bridge to get the MC gig. And yeah, so I did a trial spot, and so I got, the MC gig, and that was great because I don't know, people see money in different ways, but for me, money are very much validation. So the fact that I started to make money with comedy, even if it was just a little bit, very early on, it gave me like a big push to kind of keep doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. No, I mean, it was great on one hand. On the other hand, there were, some comedians talking shit about me on my back, which I get it in a way, because they were like, she doesn't deserve it. She didn't earn it. It's too early on, for her, the MC gig. Because sometimes I would also MC like Saturday shows, not just the low stake ones, and I get it in a way, I get it that they were like, she doesn't deserve it, but that's kind of life, like there are times in which you deserve things and you don't get it.
Yeah.
And then there are times, you know what I mean? And then there are times in which you don't really, but you still get it. And life is not fair. I can give you so many examples of things that I should have gotten and I didn't. Even if I deserved it, I worked hard, So I get the frustration, but it was also, I always felt like I have people watching me, waiting for me to kind of, mess it up and be like, see, she was not ready.
Well, yeah, but obviously, clearly you were ready because it was a success, wasn't it? So
yeah, I think, I mean, it depends on the gig, but when you host a show, especially if you host an open mic, you're not just hosting, you're kind of running the show,
Yes.
So you have to make sure everything is fine, that, I mean, I am the kind of worst case scenario kind of person, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'm always thinking ahead, I know how kind of to fix things. I know, how I'm good, in a crisis. So it's like, if, I don't know, at an open mic, sometimes you can have comedians who don't show up because you might book a pro comedian or semi-pro comedian, and they might get a better gig, so they don't show up. So you have to do like more material. You have to, you have to know who to call to replace them, or you have audience members coming and going, and I was very good. I think I still am pretty good at handling all of this, and so that was the thing. I think there were hosts that were better than me, at hosting per se.
Okay.
But I was, like being on stage, I don't know, like crowd work, whatever. But I was very good at running the show. So, and I am very reliable. So I would be the one who would always step up when another host couldn't make it, when another host wasn't available.
Yeah.
Which I think some people don't understand how important it is. Like being a comedian is not just about being funny, but it's also about being reliable. And that's why a promoter might call you all the time, or might book you all the time, or might give you hosting gigs, even if you're new, because they can trust you.
Yeah.
It's different from being a comedian doing a set.
Yeah.
For me, there are like two separate jobs. Like when I'm hosting a show, it's not really about me. I feel like as a host, you have to be a little selfless in a way. Yeah. It's more about the audience feeling comfortable.
Yes.
And let the other comedians shine. Like the way I see hosting is basically you're coming to my home as audience members. You guys are my new friends, and I am excited to introduce you to my old friends who are the comedians.
Yeah.
And we're all gonna have a great time, and you just have to trust me and do it. Yeah, and I think especially at an open mic, because sometimes at an open mic you have people who have never been to a comedy show before.
Yeah.
And so you want them to enjoy themselves. Like last week, I was hosting a show where there was a guy who had never been to a comedy show before, and it was like, I'm having a great time. This is great.
So being an actor and being an MC, then two very different jobs, as you say.
Yeah.
Where are you at your most comfortable? Where do you feel most challenged?
I don't know. I think they're just different. It's not like there's one that is better than another one. I mean, when I MC, I do like the fact that I get to talk to people more. I mean, I am a people person. I love people. I love getting to know people. When you're doing your set, it's like you're more kind of focus on your set, your jokes, and I like that too. It's definitely less stress when you're doing your set versus when you're hosting. But I like both. To be honest.
Yeah.
Especially when I also book the acts, I like the fact that I usually know the other comedians, and yeah, it kind of feels like a family, like getting together, with friends, and we also tell jokes. And one of my favorite parts is when comedians roast me, and because we've done so many gigs together that sometimes they would go on stage. I would introduce them, and they would go on stage and just say something fucking hilarious about me, and it's the best. It's the best. Like once I invited a guy to see one of my shows, and one of the comedians was on stage, and so this guy that I was seeing, he walks in, and I give him a kiss on the cheek. And so the comedian who was on stage could see the whole scene, and also the comedians were kind of in the corner of the room. They could see that, but the audience couldn't. And so basically this guy walks in, I give him a kiss on the cheek, and I guess that from the comedian on stage point of view, it looked like we were like French kissing. And so he said something like, "That's what you get for being late. Martha's gonna be so fucking horny. She's gonna." I don't even remember exactly. It was fucking hilarious. Me and the other comedians, we were basically on the floor laughing with tears. It was the funniest thing that's ever happened to me. Honestly, it's the best. It's the best.
So how much, when we see you MC or when we see you as an act, when you're on stage, how much of what we're seeing is Martha? How much is you, and how much is a character of you?
I am very honest. I think that my challenge is to kind of look and sound more like myself when I'm on stage, because I mean, I didn't grow up performing, I never done acting, I never done anything, on a stage. So I feel like I'm still not 100% comfortable and kind of natural, like my goal is basically to talk with the audience on stage the way I'm talking to you right now, basically.
Yeah.
And I'm not there yet, even though my delivery, believe it or not, has improved dramatically. It was so fucking bad at the beginning. Like, thank God I could write jokes, because I could not count on my delivery whatsoever. It was a disaster. Like when I watch my old videos, I just cannot believe how people could laugh. It was just so bad. It's painful to watch. So but yeah, I'm definitely still working on it. But I am honest. I am honest when I'm emceeing. I am honest when I do my sets. All my sets are things that actually happen to me, or like a version of it. I mean, they're all based on something that actually happened, and like probably the craziest thing that I say are completely true. Like the ones that you're like, that it's not possible that actually happened. No, that's it's the craziest things that are super accurate. So but I think that's the thing about comedy. It's a little bit like when I studied screenwriting for a minute, and so when you write a biopic, it's not a documentary, so it has to be truthful, but not true. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I don't know, like if you're writing about someone who has, let's say, he had a friend when he was in elementary school, and then he had another friend when he was in high school. But from movie perspective, it's just better that he just had one friend, throughout his life, basically. So you kind of create a character that is both friends, really, you put it. So that you kind of do the same thing with comedy, I think. It does, so it doesn't have, not everything has to be like super true, but it still has to be, there has to
like
be
a true story, but you might conflate the details just to keep it
narrative. Because you still need a structure, you still need a punchline, set up and punchline. So you gotta do it, like there is a bit that I used to do and then I stopped doing, and then now I'm doing it again for some reason, where I talk about me going to Dick's one-man show. And that's true. Like that scene that I maybe you saw that bit. I don't know, the last time at the Camden Comedy Club. I don't know.
Maybe.
But anyway, I think I did it. I'm not sure. Anyway, I went to his one-man show, and there was a moment in which there was a light on. I was in the audience, and there was a moment where there was a light on me, just a light on me. The rest of the room was dark. And he pointed at me and he looked at me in the eyes and he said something like, "There she was, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." He did a little monologue. It was longer than that. It was not just one sentence. But that actually happened, like I have witnesses. There was a friend of mine with me. Like after the show, she was like, "Oh, the show was good, and so were you," because I kind of became part of the show. And it sounds crazy, it's like, "Oh, you must have made it up." And it's like, no, I do not have that kind of imagination, I could never make something like that up, but that's just one example, I have another bit where I say that back when I was in Barcelona, I was casually dating 3 guys at the same time. One was Italian and 2 were French. And the 2 French guys were both named Pierre. It's true.
Makes life easier.
My girlfriends were making fun of me. They were like, "You're an evil genius." And I'm like, "That's what's happened. These shitty, crazy things happen to me." And, and I feel like that's like my talent, like to kind of see those ridiculous, extraordinary details in my, day-to-day life. I don't have a huge imagination. Like that's not my talent. Like my talent is seeing these little crazy things, which I don't think that they happen to me exclusively, I think it just most people brush them off. Like most people don't
Yeah.
focus on those things. And I do. And then I write bits about it, you know.
Do you like look back at your day or your week and think, oh, I can use that for material? Or are you in the moment as it's happening thinking, I can get 5 minutes out of this?
No, I think I am definitely like an overthinker. I think a lot. And I tend to get obsessed with things. You know, I fixate. And so that's why I took a lot about men, because that's like the biggest obsession. Like I find men so fascinating. I feel like women, I figure out women. Like I even, you know, I know how most women think, why they do what they do. Men, it's like they're this huge mystery for me. So that's why I think a lot about men, and like I obsess about men. And so what happens is that I would think about something that happened, usually with a guy, and I would get so obsessed with it, and I would think so much about it until I find the funny angle.
Yeah.
And that's when I write a bit.
Yeah.
So that's usually, you know, how it works for me. Yeah, I mean, the story about the three guys that I was dating, that was a story that actually came out when I was on stage doing crowd work. Because there was someone from Barcelona, and that happened in Barcelona. So I started to tell that story about Barcelona, and I was like, oh, it's a bit. Okay. I can use it some other time. Okay. But yeah, that's usually how it happens for me. It's I don't sit down and write. It's usually I am obsessed with some thought, and then I'm like, oh, that's actually funny, and you know, and then I write down like, I try it on stage. Yeah. So it's a weird process.
As you said about hosting, you've hosted your own comedy night as well.
Yeah.
What was the impetus behind starting that?
Well, it just happened that, you know, this pub wanted to start a comedy night. And so I spoke with the pub manager, and he seemed like incredibly supportive. Like, when do you want to do it? What do you need from me? You know, like, I was like, okay, I need a mic, I need a light, you know, the usual. And he sounded incredibly supportive. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna do it. Like I had comedians telling me before, you know how to run a night, so you know you should have your own. Like, and I was always like, promoting is a lot. I know, you know, it's like, you know, actually getting people, you know, audience members in a room is a lot of work, you know, and I don't really want to do it. But then this opportunity came along, and I was like, okay, I guess, you know, maybe it's time. Also, at least at the beginning, it made me think that I could choose which day I wanted to do. So it was a Tuesday, it was a good day for me. It was a good day for the area. Yeah. It was in a spot. So it was like very central, very easy to get to. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I think the location is good. That's the time, you know, the day of the week is good. And then turns out it wasn't that supportive, you know. And so it's like I don't know, maybe I'll find another venue in the future to do it. So yeah.
So having been a booker and a promoter and an MC and an act, do you watch comedy the same way?
The same way? I think so. I mean, yeah, maybe I am a little bit like more knowledgeable, but I am first and foremost a huge comedy fan. Yeah. So I still watch comedy. I mean, I know there are comedians who don't. Yeah. I find it fascinating. I love comedy. Yeah, I do watch comedy, of course.
Do you watch it and just absorb it at face value, or do you skip ahead to the punchline, or do you go, oh, I understand what they're doing now, I know where this is going, or does it still surprise you? Do you still laugh out loud like you did when you first saw it?
Yeah, well, it depends. It depends.
If it's funny.
yeah, I'm not a cheap laugh myself. Like I don't laugh at everything. But yeah, I absolutely, I still laugh out loud.
Yeah.
I mean, anything, I don't know, Ali Wong does pretty much makes me laugh out loud, like clapping to the monitor on my computer like an idiot. It's like, yeah, I still do that. Absolutely, yeah, of course. Yeah, that's I don't know. Like I feel like that's also why I I'm doing comedy, you know, like even before thinking about doing stand up, I still wanted to write comedy.
Right.
You know, I love what comedy does to people, you know, like when I'm in a bad mood or I'm sick or whatever, you know, I watch sitcoms. I watch stand up shows, you know, like I love that, you know, like we don't need to cry all the time. Like, you know, like yeah, I mean, it does make people feel better, you know, like you had a bad day, you go home, you watch Schitt's Creek or, you know, the Office or 30 Rock. Like recently I rewatched 30 Rock. Oh my God, what a masterpiece. What a masterpiece. Honestly, so good. Yeah, that's why, you know, there's like healing property, you know, to comedy. So yeah, of course I do watch it. I do it and I watch it, I consume it. Yeah. Absolutely.
So tell me about what been so far your best and worst gigs.
Okay. Okay, best gig, I would say like recently the best gig, I've done a gig in Newcastle at the Stand in Newcastle, and it was fucking amazing because there was a full room, 300 people.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever performed to 300 people before. It was crazy. It was like the energy, the adrenaline. Like when I was on stage, I was shaking the entire time. And I don't think it was the nerves necessarily. Like I think it was just all the energy, you know, coming from all the people around me. And by the way, I don't look like I was shaking. Like if you watch the video, like I don't know, maybe I wasn't visibly shaking. Maybe I just felt like I was shaking, like inside. I don't know, but it was incredible. It was such a great audience. It was a fair audience as well. Like it's not like they were laughing at everything, you know. But I really enjoyed it. I love that. Yeah, it was pretty great. Also, worst gig. Okay, worst gig. Oh my God, this is hard because there are so many, so many. I mean, comedy is full of humbling experiences. Let's put it this way. I think probably the worst gig, and I'm choosing this one for a particular reason, because I feel like it's normal to bomb, you know. I mean, it happens. Yeah. Nobody likes it, but it happens. But this one was special. Basically, I was doing a gong show.
Oh dear.
I've only done a handful of those. I am terrible at it. I can only say negative things about gong shows. And I'm not going to, because it's like, okay, you're not good at it, so you hate it. Okay, how original. I don't know. I feel like it's not intellectually honest for me talking about gong shows. You know, I feel like I should be good at it and then talk shit about it. Anyways, so I was doing this gong show. I've only done a handful. Yeah. Anyways, it was Up the Creek, the Blackout, and Mo Gilligan was there.
Yep.
Mo Gilligan watched the entire show. Okay. So I go on stage and basically it's also such a confusing experience for me because people were laughing. People were laughing. It's like people were cheering. It was going well. But the three people who had the cards,
Yeah.
they gonged me out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then as I was leaving, I was going home, there were these girls were like, oh, you were great, you were funny. I was like, it doesn't matter. And Mo Gilligan was there watching me bomb. And it's like, I mean, so bad. It's like, why? Why did you leave the house tonight? Go record some show. Why? It was so then I took the bus, I went home, I took the bus, I cried in the bus. I always cry. Why don't you do gong shows? I was like, because I find them devastating. And yeah, so I cried, and people don't believe this because I kind of look like a tough bitch or whatever. I kind of have this vibe, which I think is one of the reasons why I don't do well at gong shows, by the way. Just, people are like, no, we hate you. It's like, yeah, you make us laugh, but we still hate you, so fuck off.
If your worst gig is one where everyone was laughing and people afterwards are saying it was great, that's not like the worst of the worst, is it?
No,
it was terrible. Everyone was laughing.
That's the thing. It's like when you talk about deserving things and life not being fair, it's like sometimes you go to gong shows and there are people who don't get laughs. Maybe they get smiles, maybe they are entertaining in other ways, but they don't actually get laughs. Like you don't hear laughs during their set, and they still go through because they usually they don't win, but they usually go through. They still go through,
right.
And it's like and then I get laughs, but I see, talking about fairness, there's no such a thing as fairness. So yeah, I mean, it was. But I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if like nobody important is watching you. But when someone, but that night, actually, a friend of mine won, and he was like a huge Mo Gilligan fan. Like Mo Gilligan was his comedy hero. And he won the blackout. I was happy for him, honestly. I was very happy for him.
Yeah.
I still cried on my way home.
Well, it sounds like you've mentioned there a couple of important lessons, like, for example, comedy is always humbling. Is there any other important lessons that you've learned, anything that's informed your philosophies about your comedy going forward?
I thought a lot about this. I feel like with comedy, it's like the more I learn, the less I know. I think I'm quoting some songs right now. I'm not sure which one. But it's like I feel like the moment I think that, I figured this thing out, like I learned this lesson. I know what to do if something similar happens or whatever. Then something happens that makes me feel like I am as clueless as the way I started. I don't know anything. It's and it's just, I think a progression is just not a straight line, like that. There are so many, setbacks. Sometimes it looks like things are going in a certain direction, for the better, for the worse, and then there's a plot twist and it actually goes the other way. And I think, maybe the lesson that I learned, and again, maybe tomorrow I'll think about it. I will be like, I actually was wrong. But as it usually happens. But I think the harder you work, the better you get at it. I think for me, there was a moment where I was, around the time that I started out, like a few months in, but I was like, I don't want to do like lame open mics, like poorly, attended open mics. What's the point? I want to do the cool gigs, and then I realized actually, the people who are doing well, like the comedians are doing well right now, it's because they do all the gigs all the time. They do the good ones and the not so good ones. And it's just they don't post it about it.
Yeah.
They don't put it on Instagram where they do like a gig in the basement of a pizzeria, but they still do it.
Yeah.
They still do it.
Yeah.
And that's how you get better. So yeah, you can be too picky, when you started out, and everything, can be useful. Just even if you're telling jokes to people, like you can never know, you might come up with new material. You might mess up a joke and then realize, no, actually the messed up version is better than the one that I wrote home. And so and also you always meet new people, so you kind of build connections, you make friends, and I think a big part of it is like also like learning to this is so it's pray and love of me, but kind of enjoy the journey, because the people that you see all the time and you make jokes with all the time, and I think the further you go, the more you're like, oh, I just want to be in and out. I just want to do the set and go home or go to the next gig. But it's actually nice to hang out, with other comedians. And, we are a weird species, But we're also great, like I had such great conversations with comedians, that you cannot have with like normal people. you just cannot. You really cannot. It's like we can go so silly and yet so deep, so quickly. Like I have the most interesting conversation. Like we talk about things like gender discrimination or racism, in such a kind of casual, nonchalant, way, which is like, I mean, if I talk about, I don't know, racism with like a normal, I don't know, Black person, they would be like, why is this white lady talking about racism? What's her agenda? And also they would be tense all the time, thinking, okay, waiting for the racism to come. Okay, I just want to say something racism. Wait for it, Whereas, and same if I talk about, I don't know, feminism, like normal people are like, oh my gosh, she's a feminazi, she's gonna, she wants to lecture me, whatever. Whereas with a male comedian, you not just a female comedian, but also male comedians, you can say shit like, you know what, the problem is that men just don't see women as people, and you can just say things like that, and they're gonna be like, okay, like like they will talk about it, and just whereas if you say something like that with a normal person, would be like, what the fuck are you talking? Why? Why would you say that? But you can have these conversations. Like I was at a gig the other day, and I wanted to leave during the interval, during the break, and I was not sure I could do that. Like in terms of etiquette, basically. Like I don't know if they wanted us, to stay or whatever. And I was like, no, you can go. Don't worry. Why are you like so weird about it? And I was like, what should I say? Because I was like, what should I say? And they were like, just say goodbye. And I was like, okay, you need to understand, I'm a woman. I mean, it's so easy for me to go from normal to crazy or from normal to bitch. If I only look you, in a way that you don't like, I'm a massive bitch. Man, it's like you need to rape and murder me, and maybe people would consider that you might be crazy, maybe. But probably if they can blame the victim, you can get away with it. You know what I mean? It's like it was like, oh yeah, I get it. Like you cannot really have like that kind of bluntness with a normal person. You know, they're going to be weirded out. They're going to be like, oh, you know, you read too much Gloria Steinem. I don't know, like you listen to the Spice Girls too much, whatever. I don't know what's going on with you. I don't. Yeah, and I love that about comedians. So yeah, like try and make friends. That's a good thing. So.
What about Edinburgh?
Yeah, I'm going.
Yeah.
In an unexpected turn of events. Meaning I found a cheap accommodation for a couple of weeks. So I'm going. I'm going to Edinburgh. I'm doing compilation shows.
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's another unexpected turn of events, and I get to do like a split show or something. Yeah, I do have enough material to do like 20, 30 minutes. So if something like that, you know, comes up, I'd be happy to do it. But I mean, I've never been there. So, you know, I just want to see what all the fuss is about. And
it's going to be interesting.
I'm sure it will. Yeah. So yeah, I look forward to it. I'm a little scared because, you know, I never been there, and it's like and you're like so desperately want to have both a good time but also like a productive time. Like I want to do as many gigs as possible, and I feel like that's the whole point. I mean, the first time you go,
so how can we find out about you and where you're playing?
Instagram. I try to post on Instagram when I do. Mostly my stories. Please follow me. I need more followers. Please follow me. So mostly Instagram. I don't have a website yet. I might create one at some point, but not yet. So yeah, it's Instagram.
Yeah. And finally, can you please sum up what is comedy in a nutshell?
What is comedy in a nutshell? I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
No, I feel like I already said it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like comedy is like it's healing. It's good. It's good for you, whether you watch it or you do it. And we need laughter. It's good. It's good. Yeah.
Martha, thank you so much. It's been absolutely joyful listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.